Hello, everyone. Happy Open Innovation Thursdays. It's always a joy to be on these sessions, 15 minutes about open innovation. My name is Marisol Menendez. I'm an open innovation practitioner and enthusiast, founder of Vilacate, where we work in open innovation and ecosystem orchestration, and fan number one of Agnieszka Radziwon, our guest today. Well, this is very special for me because, of course, Agnieszka is my better half in coming with this idea, coming up with this idea of creating the Open Innovation Thursdays. I have the recording in the very specific moment where we said, let's do this every Thursday. And also because, of course, you are editor of the book, but also you are author of chapter number 25, which is our topic today. But first things first, welcome, Agnieszka. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Fine, thanks. You've been before to these sessions, but I always like to do this, to ask this question, and today the answer is special. Where are you connecting from?
I'm connecting from Berkeley. So at the moment, I do my Fulbright visiting researcher sort of a stay at University of California, Berkeley. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Agnieszka Radziwon, and I'm an associate professor of innovation management at Aarhus University in Denmark. And just a few weeks ago, I relocated to Berkeley for the fall semester. So it's actually a very special place to me, but it's also a very relevant place for this chapter. So chapter 25, it's a chapter about open innovation in regional innovation clusters and entrepreneurial ecosystems. So it's no better place to talk about these things than Silicon Valley. And it's just, I'm just exactly in the Bay Area right now.
Of course, and just in the heart of where open innovation was born with Henry Chesbrough. So I think all the stars have aligned for chapter today,
Yes, and so, I feel very much like at home. I have to admit that.
Yes, of course. So, well, you introduce yourself. As we said in the introduction as well, you are editor of the book. So at the end, you have a little bit in every chapter and orchestrating and putting this together, which is very interesting. And also you have many different chapters, which I also think brings an interesting element to our discussion, because at the end we are knitting or intertwining all these different threads from open innovation, no? This we are in part 5. Chapter number 24 was with Esteve Almiral talking about smart cities, because he's very expert in that topic as well. But I wanted maybe to take advantage of having you being an editor of the book to talk about why creating this part 5 of the book, implications for public policy.
That's a very good question. And, I think that oftentimes when we talk about business, we focus on companies, on the organizational level of analysis. Sometimes we go a little bit more down and we're talking about individuals. And we're going to talk about entrepreneurs, just like yourself, Marisol, very, very soon. We get to talk about ecosystems too. But in order to form lots of these larger structures, we need to have some sort of a support. And then you all know this very well, that there are some countries, some nations, some regions that are kind of much more fertile and fruitful and supportive in regards to entrepreneurship and different types of open innovation activity. And this is also like one of the sections we're thinking about, that, okay, we should have some learnings and then not only speak to managers, but also to policymakers and to support them and maybe show them or highlight what are the possibilities for them to best support businesses. Because at the end of the day, this is what economic theories tell us about the growth, right? And about innovation. So that has to be a collaboration between businesses, between policymakers, and between universities or different types of knowledge institutions.
Totally. By the way, we like to work in that idea as well in our World Open Innovation Conference, no? Bringing all different players, academia, industry, and policymakers into this equation. So it's very interesting, and the combination of chapters that we have here, not talking about the dimensions of openness connected to universities, open innovation and science, big science, deep tech, and open innovation. I think it promises to be quite a nice and rounded chapter talking about all these different topics. But then your chapter, number 25, is titled Open Innovation in Regional Innovation Clusters and Entrepreneurial Ecosystems. So what's this chapter about? What are the general outlines? And later on, we can dig deeper into the chapter.
Yeah. So the first spot, and the most important one, is the one about the geographical concentration of firms. So, you know, lots of the research and open innovation, it's actually built on economic geography, because this is how we learn how things organize themselves in different regions. And then here we talk about the combination of different capabilities. We talk about knowledge diffusion and knowledge spillovers. And then these things happen a lot more open when we have the concentration of firms, and maybe there's like one firm that has the knowledge, and then, you know, people talk, people mingle, and they start exchanging knowledge and new ideas, building on it, and this is what in the long term supports the growth. But in this chapter, there are basically two goals. So first is to answer the question how regional innovation clusters, or how clusters in general, differ from entrepreneurial ecosystems. So what are these different approaches? How are these built? How are these supported? What is in the center of attention? And then starting from, you know, a little bit of a clarity in this area, I moved to the area of, okay, so how could open innovation further boost the development of these companies, development of these organizations in regions in general as well? There's a little bit of a surprising finding that I realized while writing this chapter. So it wasn't originally an idea to divide into three areas. So I started with the idea of entrepreneurial ecosystems and regional clusters, but there is one more that started to be more and more prevalent in the literature.
So let's get into details so we can open this surprise, no? So
okay, more details, of course.
All right. We're talking about the regional clusters, no? And so first,
yeah.
What was your idea? You said like you were trying to focus into these regions and the impact. What was your initial idea with the chapter?
Yeah, so, you know, when we think about these regional clusters, this is something that I started to study in the early stages of my scholarly career. And then, of course, I look into open innovation, and I was like interested how people organize themselves in different regions. And of course, I look into the cluster literature, and then I realized that, wow, this literature has been building over the decades. And, you know, there are different forms of organizing or territorial approaches. And at some point, while being at a URAM conference, I was just sitting on the presentation, the scholarly presentation, and then the person was actually doing literature review on this topic. I was like, wow, this is a lot, but I don't think I fully agree with what is presented. And, you know, at the same time, I was sitting next to another professor called Laurent Escarigella. And then we're both like, yeah, I also disagree. You know, we started to have this discussion, and we decided that, you know what, we need to write the chapter that looks into these territorial approaches, so regional innovation systems, spatial districts, clusters, and so on, and see what are the similarities and differences with ecosystems. Like ecosystem, you know, a decade ago, being like a completely new literature streams. And we were wondering for ourselves, like, what are the differences? Because it seems like it's not exactly the same. So like the initial inspiration for looking into the similarities and differences, that's one of the old ideas. And we've been publishing on this together with Laurent, and also together with Judy Cobban. So have these two papers that look a little bit deeper into some of these concepts, and it's both into the connection, and then with Judy, we look more into different types of ecosystems and their goals and approaches and so on. But then while looking into entrepreneurial ecosystems specifically, of course, I acknowledge there have been like lots of great researchers working in this area, some of them being Eric Stram, Norris Kruger, or Christina Theodoraki, right? And they do a marvelous job, like really trying to get into granular level, trying to teach people like how to build these ecosystems and the way they thrive. But then once I look into the literature, I kind of initially I thought that we only talk about this geographical proximity, so spatial affordances. But something that surprised me that there's this new literature stream, very much led by Erko Autio, who is also one of the contributors to the handbook, and I hope he's going to share some insight of this chapter soon. But then something that he started to observe and conceptualize was the notion of these digital entrepreneurial ecosystems. So, not only the focus on geographical proximity and co-evolution in this respect, but he started to observe that lots of these entrepreneurs, they actually start to thrive and build their enterprises in the digital spaces. And this speaks more into the literature on digital transformation. But this is when he and together with colleagues, they started to talk about digital and spatial affordances. Marisol, I think that, the language that I've been using might be like very much academic. So if we were to get it down to earth and look into some of the elements that are very important, and maybe also the difference between these different types of forms of organizing, I think that we should take you as an example, because you are the entrepreneur and an excellent one. And I think you can actually relate to both, some of these geographical proximities where you've been thriving in the region where you work, but you build something much bigger, right? You also build on the digital, right? On the digital transformation. And then we are here in this call so that there are people from all over the world that can actually listen to our conversation and get some inspiration from it, right? So one of the first differences that I started to observe between clusters and ecosystems, that's Marisol. So that's entrepreneur. And that's this big focus on entrepreneur and entrepreneurial process. And this is what we see more in ecosystems, which I already said, they're going more into digital spaces, not just geographical ones. And then, in regional clusters, we had more of these anchor tenants. So it wasn't necessarily entrepreneurness or not necessarily startup, but it could be also like SME. So this was the kind of the focal actor out there. But here, first thing, focus on Marisol. This is how you're going to make it.
This is interesting, and I think I don't know if the research supports this, but even with COVID, when we learned to leverage the capabilities of digital connection, at the end creating these then ecosystematic connections, even maybe in a long tail phenomenon, because you then connect with similar people than you as an entrepreneur, or either other businesses that are spread around the world, but are also creating this dynamic of complementarity and value generation, in an ecosystem dynamic. So in a way, you can even have this phenomena of creating online clusters, so to speak, and this is what
of clustering. So we wouldn't call them like cluster, but like cluster online. Yeah, that's a very good point. And what you actually mentioned here is this combination of different competences, and actually in this digital entrepreneurial ecosystem, something that's very important is actually business model innovation. So also the changes of the way how we create and capture value. So, maybe more looking into regional clusters, we would look into the way how we create value regionally, right? But going into, we can think about it as a spectrum, going more into the digital aspect, then we try to innovate a lot more, and we look into these digital affordances. But, earlier on, you also asked about policymakers, right? And this is also super important. And this is like a second difference that I noticed. So first being, the focus either entrepreneur or anchor tenant. The second difference is that it's bottom-up versus top-down approach. So whenever we talk about clusters, we talk more of a top-down approach. So some of these clusters were not necessarily organically created, but policymakers decided that, okay, this is the region we need to boost. We shuffle a little bit of money, we get them started. And oftentimes these forms of organizing, they were there as long as money was there. But when we talk about ecosystems, there is more of an organic growth. Again, policymakers are very important to support it. But it means that even if, policymakers wouldn't be shuffling the money, people will still have an interest. And of course, this can only act as an amplifier. And then we have the third one.
The surprise one.
The most interesting one for us open innovation scholars. Whenever we talk about clusters or different types of regional organizing, one of the things that we noticed is related to knowledge spillovers. So the different forms of a knowledge diffusion. So people are in one region, they talk, but then the nature of knowledge spillover is that we don't control it. And, it might be related to the fact that people move, they leave our organization to move to another one. And, knowledge kind of flows around. But the difference that I started to see in entrepreneurial and digital entrepreneurial ecosystem is actually this purposeful management of knowledge. So people started to be a lot smarter about the ways they exchange knowledge, who do they exchange knowledge. Again, this is where policymakers could offer different types of institutional or legal support, as well as different types of like IP protection, right? So you would like to make sure that you can reinforce some of the protective mechanisms.
Very interesting, because when you are purposely managing the knowledge flows, then we are getting deeper into the open innovation definition, no? As
exactly.
And so maybe this like getting deeper into the open innovation dynamics, maybe it's one of the other differences with these ecosystems, no? Digital ecosystems.
Exactly that. And this is also something that we discussed, like talking about chapter 2, right? Knowledge spillovers. And I like the way how John Besson frame it, that, Henry Chisburg kind of help us to name and give a structure to what he observed. And then these were not just knowledge spillovers, that he started to put more organization, management, and structure into these knowledge flows so that people can make aware decisions of what is that they share, how, and then there's been a lot of studies we've been conducting of how to best help them in innovating, right, and achieving like high level of innovation performance.
Interesting. We've been discussing regionally here. Biscay and Bilbao are very interesting regional. It's a very interesting regional cluster. And we were in a discussion if this is a cluster or an ecosystem and the difference between those. And we also came up with this conclusion that this mandate or the structure from the policymakers mandating somehow and facilitating the generation of the structures versus the spontaneity or the organic way other ecosystems emerge. But still we can embed this purposely, the intention of manage the knowledge flows, no? And bring this open innovation dynamic to it. So this brings me to my question, just to be ready to close up. So are regional clusters ecosystems? Every regional cluster is an ecosystem? Is maybe not every ecosystem is a cluster?
No, I wouldn't look into it this way. I think I have much more simple definition. So whenever I see Marisol sitting somewhere, this must be an ecosystem. This is like, more organic growth, doesn't need any special policy to thrive, to be boosted, to connect people, to build this value proposition. And, oftentimes I would say that if Marisol is there might be some aspect of digital, connecting people and really leveraging digital transformation.
Interesting. So here is the public policy role, no? As one of the key differences also.
Yeah, as one of the key supporters. But again, this is also the instrument that policymakers could use, and they might just realize that, Bilbao wasn't the big thing many years ago. And it was to some extent thanks to policy that they started more forms of organizing, and they started to boost the art. And then, they started, their idea was to make the city big and known. And this is where one of the first steps, this might be to form different types of clusters as a form of organizing. And then sometimes you can just see that among these top-down forms of organizing, people might kind of go so detour and say that, no, we need to have something else. We're going to improve it, do it better. And we're going to organically organize among topics that maybe weren't even initially part of the agenda. or maybe sometimes people just take over, say that, oh, it was nice to have this booth. We take it over, reshape it and reshape it the way that supports our region best.
This is amazing, Agnieszka. Super interesting. Getting ready to close the session today. What main idea, call to action, or what message would you like our viewers to keep from this chapter?
Well, I would definitely encourage you to have a look at the chapter and come join us, experience this. I think, reading and listening about it is just one thing. But if you decide to join us in November at World of Innovation Conference at Berkeley, you can just have a first-hand experience and see it with your own eyes. So come and join us. And this is where we should carry on with discussions.
Yes, because it's very interesting and we could keep discussing for hours, I think, about the different aspects of this. But certainly, I think this chapter as well has this spirit of all the other chapters. So bringing the seed of curiosity just so we can keep talking, discussing, and thinking about this. Agnieszka, as always, it's a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much for your time. We are already in chapter 25. Can you imagine that we were discussing this 25 weeks ago? Well, a little bit more.
Yes, we're almost in the middle of the handbook, right?
Almost. We will keep going. Let's see how much can we keep learning and growing together as a community. And thank you very, very much for your time.
My pleasure.
Big hugs to Berkeley and see you soon there.
See you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.